Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Titan Talk. All of you out there in this universe of power, this is your host, El Vos, Gabriel Pena, the Texas Titan. Some of you know me as a Texas Titan. Other of you know me out there as just good old Gabe Pena. But I am joined today with a very special guest, Mr. Don Souza of ADL Live. Don, it is so great to have you on the show, brother. Welcome.
I think this is a long time coming, Gabe. We've been talking about this for quite some time. And man, you and I have had some very deep conversations. We've had many conversations, and I've had so many questions I've been wanting to ask you over the last year or two, and I finally get my moment. I'm gonna utilize every question I have today to find out what's inside Gabe Pena's mind.
Oh, yeah, with all the things that go on in there. But it has been a long time coming, and I'm really glad that we get to pull this off now because we're getting close to around the year mark of since our paths initially crossed, are we not?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think one of the first times, what was it? You commentating?
It was Harker Heights. Harker Heights, the CrossFit Catechism, my first time commentating with ADL, and also my first world record on that day.
That's we're coming up on that anniversary here soon.
We are, very much. It hasn't even been a full year yet, but we're getting close.
It hasn't even been a full year yet. Yeah, we're coming up on that.
It's kind of crazy to think all the miles traveled in this last year, my friend.
Oh. Well, I'd have to ask my mechanic that the services are the ADL van.
You know, I was talking metaphorical miles. But literal miles definitely play. I think you are talking to me on the road right now from Utah, far away from home in Texas.
If we're going to catch each other, it's not going to be me in Texas. I haven't been there in 6 weeks. I think I was there last week for like a day and a half to 2 days, and then I hopped on a plane immediately. Actually, we packed the van for our next show, and then I got on an airplane and hopped straight to Utah. I'm here now, and I'm going to fly back tomorrow night, and then Wednesday night, and then I wake up on Thursday morning, and I head straight to Waco.
Wow. I know talking to you last week, I think you had told me that it had been something like 50 days since you had less slept in your home bed. That's insane, man.
Yeah, as a cameraman, I know this is not part of our 5 questions, but as a cameraman, in my youth, I've been a cameraman for like 30 years. I've been traveling the globe and all over the place, spent 6 months in Central and South America and things like that. When I was younger, it was so much easier on the body and the mind and the soul to be away for months at a time or weeks or what have you. I'm 54 now. Whew, let me tell you that that fourth week not sleeping in your bed and in umpteen hotel rooms is just different now. It just feels a little different now. As I get a little older, I often reflect back and God, how did I do that? How was I gone for 6 months at a time?
Oh, home is more than a place, though. I mean, it is very much a feeling, too, especially when you spend so much time away from it. But I think it is important to kind of reflect on your beginnings, you know, in camera and filming, because that undeniably has wound you up right here at the tail end of this monumental already year. And it's been impressive, my friend. It's been very impressive to have our paths intersect as often as they have throughout this past year and just watching each other grow. It's been real fun, but it's been
quite awesome, actually. Yes, it has.
We have a fun show in store today for Titan Talk, where you're going to be doing a head-to-head 5x5, 5 questions each, which I know Don has told me he has been mulling over on all the miles he's been spending on the road, jotting down in his notebook, going 85, 90 miles an hour. No. Of course, you're at a stoplight, right?
Well, we can say that now on this Zoom. I'm out of those states. So, yeah, I was doing like 90 through Tennessee. Writing notes real quick.
Thinking about Gabe as you cross the plains of Tennessee.
About Gabe, yes. Thinking about Gabe.
Well, I'm excited for what you have on store, because the last time I saw you was at the Shaw Classic a couple weeks ago, and since then I've had some downtime kind of recalibrating and resetting since the contest. It was very much a finish line for me of sorts for this year, this competitive season. Don't have anything on my schedule yet. I've got an open mind. If I get a call or an invite somewhere, I will definitely give it some thought and take it. But right now I'm just cruising, which you, on the other hand, have not stopped working since I last saw you. I mean, you've done the Clash under 90s contest. You also did Enlighten me and bring me back up to speed with what you've
Okay,
done these past few weeks.
let's see. It started off with, I believe, and I'm even lost myself. I believe it was the '90s out in Florida, and I may be messing this up. I'm kind of delusional. Uh, um, and then I went straight to Colorado from Florida and prepped all week long with the Shaws. That is no small show. That takes a lot of. I mean, the months prior to that, but then the week right before it is definitely hands on with the entire team there. And then we stayed in Colorado after the Shaw and did a regional clash and the '80s or something. I can't remember. Oh, I'm gonna get
I think it
butchered
was
for
the
that.
'90s, the '80s
It
or
was
the
the
'90s.
'90s on
But
that one.
one of my athletes, CJ Kraus, competed there.
Yeah, so it
Yeah,
was the '90s then.
yeah.
Okay, so it might have been this. I'm not sure which other one was Florida. And then we stayed in Colorado for those, and then went from Colorado straight to Baltimore for the '91s. Whew, that was a
That's
Florida
a
to
journey,
Colorado,
man.
Colorado back to Baltimore, Baltimore back to Austin. So yeah, it's been an awesome experience. Actually, I love every minute of it. The driving is a little rough sometimes, and I think I'm done trying to figure out what is optimum for my diet in a gas station. I think I'm done with that part for right now. Just looking forward to like going to an HEB. I miss HEB of all the things. Never thought I'd say that, but I miss HEB.
If the other states understood the beauty of HEB, they would know exactly what we're talking about as Texans every time we bring it up when we go to their states. But I sorely miss it too, man, especially when I'm on the road in the mountains. There's no HEBs up there.
And let me tell you what, when my first good meal comes from a Bucky's, you know it's been a long time, and I was finally coming home and I saw that Bucky's and I was like, oh my god, I'm actually gonna have a good meal. That's where I was at for on the road.
What did you have? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact,
It was that
I had
beautiful of a meal.
3 pulled pork sandwiches
Oh
and
yeah.
like 3 scones. They were because they make the scones all hot. They make those sandwiches fresh. And then I had a big thing of gummies.
Man, for those listeners that don't know the magic of Bucky's, it is like the heaven of gas stations. They've got the cheapest gas. They've got a massive store where they make kolaches and barbecue and jerky. And if you're ever in Texas or the southeastern part of the country and you see that little beaver, that Bucky's sign, please stop. It's a Texas landmark.
It's
Anyways,
amazing.
anyways, done. Let's dive right in, man. 5x5 questions, 5 for each of
And
us.
also, I just really quick,
Oh
I
yeah.
want to say 5x5 is a format that you and I sort of just dreamt up. But I also want to say it kind of ties in to
To our friends, my co-hosts for Beerstone, the contest that myself and 5x5 Brewing in Mission put on every year. So we're getting our efforts underway for Beerstone 2023, and you can bet your ass that Don and I are going to be working closely on figuring out the best way forward for making an even bigger and better show than last year. But I'm really excited for that. So stay tuned for Beerstone 2023 updates that's coming in March of next year. But things to
any
be excited
teasers on
about.
that. Any teasers on that you wanna throw down before we get started?
So we always want to do like very big, gnarly vehicle pulls. And last year we did a 3 series of a 60,000 pound Hemet, an M9 truck at 24,000 pounds, and an LMTV at 10,000 pounds. We want to go even bigger this year. And we are waiting on some help from some of the cities around that one that we want to have host us. And if all can go according to plan, the vehicles that we will be pulling this year will not be on tires. They will be flown in and landed for the pulls this year. But I will say no more on the subject until we get all the formalities set, all the T's crossed and the I's dotted.
I love it. Okay, who's going? I don't have a coin.
Well,
Do you have a
that's all
coin?
right, because in the honor of chivalry, you are my guest, sir. I will have you go first on our 5x5 today on Titan Talk. Let's hear
Okay.
what you got for me, brother.
Okay. So, support systems. I I'm just going to narrow this down to 2 incidences, and then you can elaborate on what it means. So, heading into the Shaw, I believe Luke Stoltman had a little bit of a challenge. Was it Luke or Tom that had a little bit of an air challenge and couldn't make it?
That was
It
Tom.
was Luke.
That was Tom,
Oh, it's
the
Tom.
world's strongest man
Okay.
champion.
So there was a little hiccup with the transportation for, I believe, his wife, his massive part of his support system. While we were at the Shaw, Bianca, um, it was something really small. I believe it was just her backpack wasn't clear or something, and I don't believe they really comprehended or knew who she was and her relevance to the event. So she wasn't allowed in for a few moments. And you had passed our booth, and I saw your disposition change a little bit. Um, can you talk a little bit about the importance and what that means to have your support system there? um, what does the support system mean to you, and what is it like when you don't have it on such short notice, as I witnessed? And then what's it like, how do you prepare for that when you know you're not going to have your support system there and you are solo for that week or that weekend or what have you? I want to talk about support systems and the importance.
So this is a very unique sport and a very unique topic to talk about the sport, because this sport at face value is a sole individual sport. You know, we go out there, no one lifts the weights for us, no one goes through the events doing things for us. It is all how much effort we put in as the individual in our training and how we're able to execute the contest. But just because it's an individual sport does not mean that there is not a plethora of support behind the scenes. It takes a village in a lot of ways. You know, it's more than just a team. You know, you have your direct team, which might be helping you with supplementation, which might be helping you with travel, training, whatever it have be. But then you have that intimate level of support that comes from our partners that we have in this life. You know, my wife Bianca has always been my partner in my time as strongman. I didn't start competing in strongman until well after we started dating. So she has always been there. She's a competitive strongwoman herself, and she's my rock. She knows all the struggle that goes into every endeavor with this pursuit. There's a saying, the blood, the sweat, the tears, and that can be very literal for all three of those things a lot of times. And no one understands that sacrifice more than the person you go home to every single night. That being said, you know, when you have that person who understands you and your struggles more than anyone else in this existence, to have them there with you when you go through these trials of strength. They're there to help you as another mind, to see everything that you might not be able to see in the moment of preparation and execution, the adrenaline, to help you make rational choices on what should, like, for example, what should the next lift be on world record breaking attempts? You know, how should we pace this? You know, how are the other guys looking? All this stuff. You have another person there to help calibrate you and hone you in. And if things don't go well, that's another thing. If I bottom out on an event and I'm in a mental case, you know, going to the next one, that previous event is already done. What I need to do is I need to focus on that next event to give it my all. And sometimes that's working uphill in a lot of ways. It's a very tough thing to do. And we stand a much better chance if we have that rock in our lives there to kind of help ground us, act as the lightning rod, and help us see things with clarity and know that everything's going to be okay. You know, it sounds cheesy, but we do need that assurance a lot of the time, because the fundamental nature of the sport, Don, is we break ourselves down in our training. We literally physiologically break ourselves down so that we can rebuild and come back stronger. And when there is a constant process of breaking down and rebuilding, there is that need to have someone who can kind of essentially hold the pieces together at times when the breakdowns get too tough or too arduous or hard to face. And that's where the support system comes into play. This memory that you're recollecting from the Shaw Classic, my wife had come later on than we had started because she's caring for our infant daughters, Yumara, and you know, she's on a rigorous pumping schedule, carrying all diaper changes, all this. She wanted to come right before I started doing my deadlifts for the Hummer tire, a deadlift, and I was going for a world record. My intent was giving it the absolute best that I could, and I knew that was going to put me at or near the top. So I was counting on her being there. I knew she was going to get there later, but she got stopped at the door by a security guard who took his job way too seriously. He flagged her for not having a clear backpack, which was her diaper bag full of diapers. And another security guard let her through because that was fine. She could go through and be checked and then be admitted entry. But this guy just totally blew up, and he was yelling at her, being very aggressive. And I had half a mind to, go into an investigation mode and find out who he was and get him fired. But it's all in the past now, and we got her in. But she had a breakdown, man. She was there to help me and support me in a moment where arguably I needed her most, and she was denied entry. And that whoever that security guard was there on that day really, really ruined a couple of moments for me in terms of prep getting into that. But in that moment where things don't go well, it takes a lot of mental resilience to understand the core fundamental truth that I'm going to be the one going to do this, not her. There is the power in self. No matter how hard it is to see sometimes, we still have to have that mental fortitude to understand that we are the ones executing this task. No one can do it for us. Sure, it might be nicer to have our support system there, but in the possible reality that they can't be there, what are you going to do? Just sit there and not do it? You're going to go out there and give it 80% instead of 100? No, but there was a lot of me having to talk through myself. I think I walked down the hallway after figuring that she had gotten turned away and sent back to the hotel, and I just screamed at the top of my lungs, just whatever curse word came to mind as loud as I could. And I was pissed. I was pissed. But there was that kind of like, in that scream, there was like, this isn't happening, but I've got to zero myself back in. Like, this is happening, but I can't allow it to happen in a way that's going to affect me. So she got back in there, but it was the whole unforeseen nature. Like, she should have been admitted entry. She had my athlete badge, and it should have been as simple as that. But she didn't. And in those cases where, let's say I go overseas, and I can't bring her with me, at least I have all that prep time and understanding that she's not going to be there, and that this is going to be a sole pursuit. And my times to talk with her and to have our little team chats, talk about, performance aspects, strategy, things like that, those will have to happen either before or after. They can't happen during. And that's fine. We accept that. But in the moment where it's unforeseen and we can't account for it or prepare for it, that throws a curveball at us. And when we're trying to do things building up to a pinnacle performance, the last thing we want is those curveballs. We don't want unforeseen issues. We want everything that we know we're going to face to be a seen enemy, and that's it. So I empathize for Tom's situation, because that sucks too, especially being an international traveler. If his partner can't come with him, that's a significant blow. And I know he deals with autism, and even without autism, this sport is so full of mental hurdles. I've had mental health issues that I faced just walking this path too. I'm very open about it, but it's a tough sport. It really is. We break ourselves down, and sometimes we need that team member to help hold us back together. But I don't know if that answered your question or not. I might have gone rambling for a bit.
That was a rather large bellow from you that echoed through the Budweiser Event Center as an entirety, and that was a rather large crowd for you to be able to get louder than that. But I was where did that come from? And it sounded like Gabe. Oh, there's Gabe. Okay, all right, let's.
Yeah, I was absolutely livid about that. I could not believe that happened. But it sounded like a typical case of someone with a power trip because they have a uniform. But it's in the past. We got her in, and she got there right before my real heavy attempt. So when it was time to go,
amazing, and it was epic
to
watch.
Going head to head with Novikov, I've had a couple moments of that in my history in the sport, but that was the most electrifying experience I have had to date in this sport. And I still came shy of that world record, but it was still the pinnacle of like electrifying experiences for me. I loved it, and it was so much fun. I know what the world record feels like, and I am sure as hell going to come back and give it my all next year.
And speaking of next year, going to see you at the Shaw. I just saw that announcement. And
yeah, the Shaw Classic is right back at the Budweiser Event Center next year. And man, it was just incredible, Don, and I'm sure you could feel it too. The energy from that atmosphere of having that stadium filled, not just with fans, but every fan that was there. This is the United States of America. This isn't the UK or some small country. They came from all over, even different countries. So you had a stadium filled with super fans, not just fans. And that was It was
It,
literally the coolest and most intense environment I've ever competed in, just from the fan support.
yes, yes. You're up.
Done. ADL has now been in existence for how long? About a year and a half?
Almost 2 years. We're
Oh,
going on 2 years.
going on 2 years. So it hasn't even been a full 2 years yet.
No.
And in this time, you have made some serious waves in the sense of being able to bring the experience to people all over, not just who attend these contests. And that's incredible. But to get to this point, it takes a lot of passion and drive. You know, you've had to really put in the footwork, literally, especially in those early days, and getting your name, your brand out there. On the origins of ADL, you know, you think of your time, your background as a cameraman. Why strongman? This is in a lot of ways a very niche sport. It's the best sport in the world, if you ask me. But why strongman? How did ADL come into live streaming this fantastic sport?
Um, well, first of all, I don't know if if your viewers or everybody out there knows what ADL stands
Why
for.
don't you tell them?
All day long.
Yeah, first one's in, last one's out. Very literal
First one,
every time, right?
that's what's out. Yeah, I was a handheld cameraman for a couple decades and traveling internationally a lot, domestically some, but internationally mostly. And COVID, COVID came to town, so that all shut down, and we all got together and banded together, and we were watching. Nancy and I are watching a lot more live streaming than we ever had in the past. I think the whole world was watching anything that was on the internet at this point. Live streaming launched. I mean, it was already a thing, but COVID just took it into orbit. So that was kind of the setup for our journey. That was sort of the railroad tracks were set. You know, just needed what was the train going to be look like. So we called our partners at JVC and said we want to dive into this live streaming. This live streaming deal right here. We see this as the future. We see that this is really moving up. We want to be a part of this. They sent us a ton of gear and said, do what you do best on. We're behind you 100%, which I love JVC Professional. They've been behind us 100% since day one. So we had to find some things to live stream, and we were at the time doing some podcasts over in Austin, some light podcasting for another one of our clients, and they were getting ready to hold a strongman event there. And we said, well, you know, let's take these same cameras, let's put them over here, and let's just see what we got over here. And we just sampled it, just tried it out a little bit, and it was horrible. It didn't work. We were outside and we were trying to rely on the horrible internet, and it was dirty, so we just did a lot of handheld, and it was fun. But Nancy was hooked. Nancy was hooked. She was hooked on the camaraderie, the her past experience. Her experience with sports has been basically sports that are really just at each other. You know, as much as strongman is at each other and you're going against each other, especially like say stone loads back and forth thing. Right afterwards, you guys are hugging, and it was just so full of love, and as maybe it's not the right word, but it was so full of just passion and respect for one another. That Nancy was hooked 100%. I was kind of pretty hooked on it. I saw, okay, this needs to be out there. So I did a little homework. I'm more than sure. I never think I'm the first one that's coming along and inventing or bringing something to the table, and we're not certainly with Strongman. But when we did go to look around, there wasn't a lot there that was impressing me as a cameraman, as a producer, director, as somebody who's been in broadcast. I didn't expect to find television ready stuff. A quantity of it, obviously you got some World's Strongest Man produced content, things like that are obviously produced at a high level that I'm like, yeah, I see that. But there was nothing at the amateur level. There was nothing at this kind of the sub level that feeds into the pro. So I said, why don't we jump on this? Why don't we jump on the people that it gives our company a future. If we're following some people over here, a lot of amateurs, we're going to follow their journey. We're going to follow their path. We're going to follow their journey up. So we jumped on it again. We reached out to big techs. Actually, it was a gentleman by the name of Mike who was running. He was a promoter of that event. He introduced us to big techs, and oh my God, Rob and Esther, wow. So they were getting ready to do about 10 strongman shows in a row. And I said, this is how we're going to learn. We're going to practice. We're going to learn. Uh, again, I come out of adventure travel television. I did travel TV shows. We went to exotic places, Mayan ruins, crazy things. I had no concept really of how to film strongman stuff. It's moving, it's this, it's that. So I'd film professional sports, NFL, Major League Baseball, soccer, things like that. It's very structured. It's very, you put the camera here, you put the camera here. It was very structured. Strongman was very unstructured, if you will. So I found it very challenging. I loved the challenge. I loved everything about trying to figure it out. It kind of renewed my energy into production, if you will. And on our third or fourth one, we started getting kind of just started gaining momentum. And what I didn't, what Nancy didn't expect, what I didn't expect, was the amount of people that would come back to us and say, thank you so much. My family has never seen me do this before. They've only seen photos or some cell phone video that somebody tried to catch or something. And I'm trying to explain to my dad in Missouri what this whole thing means, and he can't grasp. My mother over here, my grandmother, my brother in Australia or somewhere. It was the outpouring of people that were telling us how grateful they were that we were doing this, that their families could see them, that so many people. In all honesty, and just being totally candid here, Nancy was like brought to tears. Like in our first probably 5 or 6 times, where groups of people coming up to shake our hands, to meet us, to say thank you for doing this. I can't believe you did this. Nancy's brought to tears, and I'm like, well, this tells you that we're onto something. That we are onto something. We are. This is the right path. And then I personally got to meet some of the athletes, and then I was really sold. I couldn't believe the mindset and the respect that these athletes were having for each other. Um, Again, I have filmed professional sports, uh, NFL, things like that, and they're on a different level. They're just going to crush you, and they don't really want to shake your hand afterwards. They're just going to dominate. After the game, they show some love, things like that. There's a general respect there, but overall, they're just out there to inflict pain on you. So we just jumped into, and then the amateur level. It was so fun and just pure transparency here through this. The amateur level was not going to carry our company financially. There just wasn't the return. There was so much love. I wish the love equaled dollars. That the love does not equal dollars. There was much more love than there was dollars. So we had to kind of retool a little bit and then kind of figure out our path. That was, we wanted to stay with Strongman. We knew we wanted to stay with Strongman. We just didn't know how it was going to work out financially. Our first year, we took an absolute loss. Every show we did, we lost money. There wasn't a single show in our first year that we made even a dollar. It was tough, but I also know that when you start a production company and you start any endeavor that's going to last, you're going to have to sink some money into it. The UFC um, was underwater for almost 17 and a half years
Yeah.
before they made money. They broke and they started making money. I don't want to last that long, but I knew there was going to be a period of time. We just had to figure out where our niche was, and then we started finding our groove with the next shows up, um, Beer Stone and things like that were kind of mixing the amateur and the pros together. Wow, okay, now our audience grew a little bit more. We're getting a little bit more pay per view. And then just fast forward to, I can tell you about it along the way, but let's just go to Shaw, and then that just now we know where we want to be. Now we know the where we're going to still be able to make enough money to continue to do this for the athletes, for the spectators. Um, we started also seeing athletes that were being very candid with us and telling us that they actually got a sponsor or two because they were seen on the live stream. And just like you've seen and many other people seen, we try to, I aim to make it look very ESPN. Like I want it to be broadcast ready. So we went and got all broadcast equipment, all of our equipment's television ready equipment, and that sets us apart immediately. So these athletes were coming up and saying, "Hey, I actually got a sponsorship because of this." Well, their names across the bottom. You got logos. You got everything in the background. It's well produced. You got commentary. You, I can't even tell you how many people have recorded and shared and DM'd and told us about the commentary underneath their performances. Not only did it help them, but they were so proud. Gabe, I can't even tell you how proud people were to have Gabe Pena commentating underneath them. And there was a couple, I don't even want to try to remember the names here, but there was a couple athletes that said, I actually listened to the replay, the video on demand, and I listened to Gabe talking about what he would have done different, or how he would approach that lift or pull or push or whatever, and then I just retooled my training and it worked. So
Wow.
you were acting as a trainer literally through your commentary to some of these athletes. I don't think I've ever told you that, actually.
You haven't, and that brings a big smile to my face, man. I mean, anytime I get a chance to do commentary for an ADL live stream, it's going to be one hell of a fun day. I love it, and that is one of the coolest parts. Also, is when all is said and done, when I've had my on-air fun, then the fun of getting to socialize with the athletes and have them come up and meet me and just getting to chat with them, and to have something as simple as me saying a few words, with a passion of mine, and have it translate to real meaningful action in someone else. That's, I don't know, man. It's just one of the coolest feelings to hear. And I've met a lot of people who have enjoyed, whether it be, my live stream commentary or the podcast. And it's been a very profound joy of mine to kind of help share my passion.
One in particular, it was the hold, and somebody had their arms up, and you had mentioned, hey, when I approach this, I want my arms down. I want the tension and everything on my back, and I'm not going to say it as well as you, but it was just something as simple as just, I would have done this, this is how I would have approached it. And that particular, I believe it was a female, as a matter of fact, that particular female athlete DM'd us and said, I cannot believe how much more out. She goes, I want to go back and redo it now, because now I understand how I want to do that move and enjoy it. But to get to the answer, why Strongman, it's time. I remember younger watching on television. Again, I didn't really take to it that much, but I watched it, and it was watching people pull airplanes or carry refrigerators on their backs, and it was just so insane. And then I went on my journey in my life, and then I came back, and then now this is in front of me. I'm like, oh, this is not on TV. I want to do everything I can to bring this to light, to bring this to people. This is so awesome. People are throwing these great competitions. Rob and Esther, I will thank them forever. I will forever do Big Tech shows. They help launch us. They help navigate where we were going to go, what we were going to do. Our first show, our first couple shows, our first whole run of shows was Big Tech shows. But I just loved the camaraderie. I loved the events were just, I just loved everything about Strongman, and everything. And before we move to the next, I love everything except for chalk.
I suppose that gets all over your equipment.
It gets all over my equipment. I have to so as odd as that, we have to take just so all the viewers know, all that equipment you see and all that setup we do. Yeah, we go home and we reset up everything, and we wipe all the chalk off of all of our equipment.
I've heard the exact same thing from the camera guys at World's Strongest Man. They hate chalk. They absolutely hate it. But I asked you about the why Strongman, of course, because I want to know how you got to where you are now, especially with your background as a cameraman. But also for all of you listeners out there, if you ever see Don walking around, you'll instantly know he's Don because he has just like the most glorious Zeus carved calves you've ever seen on an individual. Coming from another guy who's been told he has good calves, Don's got great calves. So I was like, maybe Don has carried a couple yokes around in his day. Maybe he did some stone loads. But
In full transparency, I have never done anything strongman.
so you're just one of those guys with gifted calves from all the walking that you've done.
Well, it might be my nationality, and I grew up on the beach, did a lot of soft sand running and surfing, and
That's it.
might have been the soft sand.
Especially if you did it in your early years as a younger individual, that
yes,
sticks
I
with
think
you
it
your
was
whole life, man. That's awesome.
soft sand.